Welcome back to the Conscious Diva podcast. I'm Tatiana. In today's episode, I'm joined by Banafsheh Sayyad, visionary creator of Dance of Oneness, a powerful path of spiritual embodiment that weaves together movement, healing, and the sacred intelligence of the elements. In this episode, we explore her new book, Dance of Oneness, Embody Love and Luminosity to Transform Your Life. This is truly a remarkable book going far beyond choreography and into something more intimate, a lived experience of connection. Banafsheh shares how the elements come alive through the different dance traditions, from the fire of flamenco to the expansiveness of the transcendent space of ether. And together we explore how dance becomes a doorway back to ourselves, a way of listening, feeling, and ultimately remembering that we are all divinely connected. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to follow the podcast, leave a review, or if you prefer to watch, you can find me on YouTube and Instagram at The Conscious Diva. Thank you so much for listening. It is so lovely to meet you and to have you here to talk about your new book, The Dance of Oneness. This was an exceptional book, I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tatiana. Wonderful to be with you here today.
It was not what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be a work more about just the practice of the Sufi dance, which I knew nothing about really. And so that's what I expected. But it's not that at all. It's really so much more. Of course, you touch on that, and that's a part of what you do, incorporated into what you teach. But yeah, it's just there's so much here. I was so like, oh my God, where do we even begin? So I'm just going to have you start really simply with explaining what is this dance of oneness?
Yes. So this practice, this dance practice that I was guided to create, I was looking for how to bring together, how to bring into a cohesive whole all of my own trainings and interests and what I felt that I could share with people, because I felt people working with people and seeing people over the years, I had noticed that we tend to be disembodied. We tend to not be in our bodies. We tend to be more in our heads, or not at all present in any aspect of our body. So I was guided to create this practice that operates in three dimensions, or it brings together three streams, if you will. One stream is the dance and movement techniques, as well as the invitation to do freestyle dance, to move in your own way. Another stream is wisdom teachings. And I draw the wisdom teaching stream from the Sufi teachings, the Taoist teachings, as echoes of the divine feminine wisdom that I'm mostly inspired by. And then
Mm.
the third stream is healing. Already to embody wisdom teachings and, truths that have been shared with us throughout time by our ancestors, already to embody these, to put them into practice, is healing. But I also draw from my background in Chinese medicine. I'm also an acupuncturist and herbalist. I draw that information in the pathway of energy in the meridians, as well as the chakra system and other forms of energy medicine, together with science, modern science, to create this practice that brings together these three dimensions, these three streams, to invite us into wholeness.
And so you are a choreographer, you are a mystic. You've just mentioned you are a practitioner of Chinese medicine, and but you've also really studied some really profound traditions. Everything from your, of course, your Persian background, but the flamenco. And I'd love for you to just explain because the book. This is a thick book. There's a lot in this book, right? There's so much here. I think maybe the best way to explain all of these is in the elements, how you've so beautifully broken down the different elements and how each one of these practices that you were drawn to and studied and completely embodied. The way you describe your practice, your experience with flamenco was just so, I could feel that. I could just imagine you
Mm,
collapsing and the whole story that you tell in that. Actually all of them, when you're really describing your experiences, your complete embodiment of these practices is really beautiful. So maybe a good place to start is with connecting how you came upon these. And of course, they were also mystically, they arrived at the right time into your life. But I really loved the parallels of the elements here. So perhaps that's a good place to sort of to begin, I suppose, with how you came to create this dance of oneness.
Yes, yes. So I realized that only one form of movement or dance, be it flamenco, Persian dance, or Tai Chi, doesn't address the totality of the human. So I was inspired to draw the threads from each of these practices that I knew so well, because I really believe in walking my talk. I wanted to share something that I knew about, that I had experienced, that I had explored all aspects of. So it became very clear to me that a form like flamenco, which was my first form that I trained in, is it activates the element of fire as well as earth. And so embodying fire, what is that like? What does that do for us? What does that give us in our daily life, not just in the dance? Because I'm very interested in inviting people to dance their life, not just feel like, oh, dance is something that belongs to people who've trained in it or perform it. Dance doesn't just belong to a Baryshnikov, or obviously he displays it in absolute splendor, but it's an invitation for us all to participate in. So when I speak about these forms like flamenco and then Tai Chi, I'm bringing threads from them that can inspire us and guide us. Of course, if someone is very interested in, going to the, fully experiencing Tai Chi or fully experiencing flamenco and becoming a flamenco dancer, that's a little different. I absolutely support and love that. But for everyone else, where you're wanting to basically embody your spirituality, then what Dance of Oneness offers through these forms and the elements is the different faces of the human. So the fiery earth aspect through flamenco, and then Tai Chi activating the water element, this kind of undifferentiated, cyclical way of moving that mimics water, and learning from that element. What does that element teach us? How do we activate more of the yin element? How do we come more in touch with that calm, peaceful undercurrent? And then we have Persian dance in this practice that I teach, and that activates the air element. It's very ethereal, it's lightweight. It invites us into experiencing how our body is 99.999% energy. So, how do you come in touch with that, and how does that inform you? So bringing all of these together through the whirling, through the spinning dance, that kind of brings all of these elements into a cohesive whole, as well as activate the ether and sound element. So then all of them together opens us to embodying light. So all of these different elements coming together in this dance of oneness.
You have different traditions broken down and the definitions of the words that are used. If people have ever seen the whirling dervishes, that's a beautiful looking image. Of course, mostly men. I don't think I've ever seen women doing it. And they're in the white gowns with the hat and they're spinning around. That was my only. Really, my only association. I was always fascinated with it. I always thought, wow, this is so amazing. I wondered why it was just men doing it. I was familiar that with Rumi, that he had, I didn't realize that he was the founder of Sufism. I realized he danced as this tradition, but I didn't know he was the founder of it until I read it in your book. So just explain this a little bit, because of course you share that women do dance, and you yourself do, and you have the beautiful story of how you were welcomed in Turkey to go and participate in this 40-day celebration.
Yes, yes. So the Rumi is not the founder of the Sufi path. This is a very ancient path. He's just one of the illuminated teachers in this path, in this long tradition. And But he is the person that we associate with the whirling practice, that in Persian we refer to as sama. Sama means to listen. So this beautiful way of describing this practice as a way of listening, listening to spirit, the voice of spirit that's accessed through your heart. And what's beautiful also about this is that it is the listening that preserves, helps us persevere in the dance, in this spinning that can be daunting for some people, right? It's like how do you keep your balance? How do you keep yourself from falling over? And it's this listening to attuning into the voice of spirit and receiving guidance like Rumi did. Why he's so associated with it closely is that the love poetry we love from him all around the world flowered through him as he whirled. And it's a testament to this incredible practice that brings us into heart, mind, and body coherence, where his poetry just flowered from him in perfect rhyme and meter in the Persian language. And his friends and followers wrote them down. So the poetry that inspires so many of us and has done so for hundreds of years flowed through him like that. He didn't literally sit down and write them.
Mm.
So this is the power of this practice, this whirling practice. But to your point of, yes, primarily men have been associated with it. They have been the ones who whirl, and uh, throughout time, we've associated with a masculine practice. But the biographers of Rumi do indicate that even in his own time, there were women who whirled, but they didn't want to make that very known because in Islam, dance and music are considered subversive. They're considered morally corrupting. So because they lived in an Islamic environment, they wanted to underplay this knowledge, this idea that Islam had about dance and music. They didn't want they didn't want them to stop their gatherings that they already have felt was suspect, because if they thought women attended, for sure these gatherings would have been closed down. Because in Islam, men and women should not gather in the same space when they're not married or related.
And it's such a beautiful expression of connecting to the divine, as you so wonderfully describe in your book. So that's, I mean, that's the thread you've got woven throughout your whole book is really connecting to the divine feminine. And also with the whirling, you explain how you one direction you go, if you're going to counterclockwise, it's the masculine, and coming to the right, to the clockwise direction, it's the feminine. Just explain that the connection to the spiral and what happens with our energy when we're moving in these different directions.
Yes. So the whirling dervishes who you refer to whirl they work counterclockwise. They go to the left, and they say this is the direction of the heart. But you know, the heart is in the center of our body, and it's tilted more to the left. You have the bigger chambers of your heart on the left, but it is in the center. So both directions, any direction to me is the direction of the heart. But this is a mystery. This is a mystery that I invite people to explore within themselves. What does it mean? How does it feel to turn counterclockwise versus clockwise? You know, all the planets in our solar system, including the Earth, turn counterclockwise. They go to the left and around, you know, the sun, everything's moving counterclockwise, except for Venus that goes clockwise. So I feel the clockwise turn is a Venusian turn, if you will. And
Mm.
just from my own experiences, the counterclockwise turning is evolutionary. It moves up. It has an ascending energy to it. And the right turn, the clockwise turn, is revolutionary. It creates change. Because imagine if everything is moving to the left, counterclockwise, then moving the other direction is creating change.
Mm.
It's so I call that revolutionary turn. But
Mm.
really, I always invite people in my sessions when I teach the whirling to explore for themselves how does it feel for me, this turning? And
Mm.
of course, we have this rotation in many different practices, like in Chinese medicine and acupuncture, we turn the needle counterclockwise versus clockwise. They're different. And so you can take even that knowledge into your experience of the whirling, what difference that there
Mm.
is.
I have that experience when I work with my clients. I channel work with energy, and I often, if something needs to be expelled from the body, it will go in counterclockwise. We'll go to the left first. It will spin to the left,
Exactly.
and then we invite in the higher consciousness, the divine light back into the body to replace and fill that space, and then it welcomes it in from the right, and it's quite a beautiful experience to witness and also for the person to feel that shift in their body energetically.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
so I
love
love
what you're saying. Yeah, that's the same as acupuncture. We turn the needle left toward to counterclockwise to reduce any fullness that needs to be reduced. And then clockwise is tonification, it's strengthening.
mm.
So it's interesting. It's very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's what it felt like when you were describing the dancing, that you're
Exactly.
we're definitely activating and moving things to the left and then completely opening as we connect to the divine feminine and moving to the right and having this whole other heart opening, expressive feeling. And I
Hmm.
loved how you just described also in the beginning of the book that children, sorry, I had an ant climbing there. Uh,
Audience.
children will spin around. You said children will spin around, and they do. And I can remember doing that as a child too. My own children, when they were little, they'll just get lost almost in a trance-like state until an adult says, "Stop spinning," and then they'll stop and they'll fall on the ground.
Yeah, and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes. It shows you how instinctive it is and how primal it is. That's why that's why I was saying it. Rumi wasn't the founder of it because it's. I feel it's very primal. It's
Mm,
ancient, and everything that we can conceive of in our universe is spinning, right? As far as our mind can understand everything spins. As you and I are sitting here, everything is spinning inside us, our DNA coils, and
mhm,
inside atoms, there's the spin. But we have this experience of stillness, which is just fascinating.
mm,
But given that, I find that, entering the spin consciously by choice without an agenda is a profound thing, is a profound practice of what
mm.
then you experience. Similar to what you're saying, you empty yourself and receive the guidance that is needed at that particular time.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I really had never, well, I don't, I was always curious about it, the Sufi, the dancing, the whirling, and wondered, and I just assumed that you had to be initiated into it, that again, because it was only men, that this was something that was just to be witnessed and experienced as a viewer versus being the dancer yourself and going into that trance-like state. And I just never, I don't even know why, it just never really occurred to me. I was like, oh, that looks really beautiful and really sacred, but it also looks like it's you have to be in a specific order initiated into it, as I said, and in order to be guided into that state. So can just talk through the trance state, what happens, and I'd love for you to talk about how you as a woman you were welcomed in to do
Hmm.
this.
Well, what you're saying is absolutely true of tradition. Traditionally, if you wanted to become a whirler or if you were interested in the whirling, you had to be initiated. You first became a dervish, which means the carrier of light or driver of light. If you look at the etymology of the word, you're first initiated as a dervish, and then you're taught how to whirl. And this practice belonged, the practice that we now know as the practice of the whirling dervishes, belonged to the followers of Rumi, the Mevlevi order. Mevlevi is his own title, is the title of Rumi. And incidentally, it wasn't started by him because he didn't believe in orders and institutionalizing spirituality. It was started by his son, and then it developed into what we know today. So this practice really belonged to this order, and others now over time have adopted it as well, other Sufi orders. But yes, traditionally you had to be initiated. It's just that in modern times we every information is open to everyone now. It's so much more accessible, and not only that, it's important for the evolution of humanity that these mysteries now be exposed to whoever is has the receptivity to receive them. And I feel that that's quite a blessing. And also, it shows us the urgency of the time we live in, that we need to learn fast. We need to embody these ancient teachings quickly, and not, with pressure or anxiousness, but that we need to embody them so that humanity can evolve. For myself, I just started whirling just one evening. I just started turning and turning around myself. I actually was always turning as a child, and really didn't, never really stopped. But as a practice, it just kind of came to me one evening, and I just continued and did it. And there's a whole story about that in the book. And then I realized, yes, this is a practice of these groups, and there's an order. Even though I had always been, since a teenager, guided by Rumi, I hadn't really looked into the dimension of the whirling as much. So when I discovered them, it was quite a joy to see that, wow, this is a thing. And but then quickly became aware that mostly men do it and all of that. But having had my own practice, I developed my own way, and would then travel to Turkey and met groups of people who were dedicating themselves to this, and men and women, not in the robes necessarily, just as they were,
Mm,
which was so amazing and so heart opening. And
mm,
this was the group that also received me in, asking me to teach my own dance form, to teach Dance of Oneness, even though typically in many communities the dancing and whirling are not synonymous,
mm,
only because whirling is more meditative and dancing is associated more with entertainment. So
mm,
the community embraced me with open arms, understanding that my approach to dance was as sacred as the approach is to whirling,
mm,
which was a joy to be affirmed like that
That's a
by
beautiful compliment. Right.
yes, yes. But yeah,
And
as you were saying, traditionally it was only men whirling, and I feel I made a lot of change in that domain, uh, bringing the whirling to the stage as a woman. I had really never seen anybody do that before. So I was also blessed to be able to pioneer this into the psyche of the people. And now you see many, many, many women whirling on stage, or in a performance, or
mm,
prayer formance
yeah.
situation.
I think performance is a really beautiful way to explain it. You have, I mean, you were born to be a dancer. It sounds like from your story in your book. You knew from a young age this is what you're meant to be doing, and I think this, the way you have described the longing for the dance from your early years, being born and raised in Iran, in Persia for a period of time until you had to leave in 1979. Just talk about this a little bit with finding yourself. I found that part of in the beginning of the book when you're telling the story, these realizations you were having with the way that women were being viewed and then suppressed. And then when you moved to the United States, you had this a whole other view of the way women were presenting themselves. And I found that to be like I was so agreeing with you, especially in the
Mm,
West, the way women
mhm.
don't even realize that they've been conditioned in this patriarchal way to be perceived, and that is something that I think a lot of, especially young women, but also older women, have just embraced without even maybe perhaps realizing where in the psyche that presentation of the female form has come from.
Yes, yes. I did grow up in Iran and faced many of the situations that women face in repressive cultures like Iran, especially after the revolution, the Islamic takeover of Iran. And now the world is coming to see more and more of, the criminality of this regime as they're exposing themselves more and more to the world. And I also want to take this opportunity right now to, to say to you and to your listeners, to your audience, that we in the world community need to make sure that whatever comes out of the situation we're in with the United States, Israel, and Iran, that the people of Iran get to choose their own government and leadership. It needs to be the people's viewpoint and what they need. They've been held hostage for 47 years, the people who live in Iran, and those of us who had to leave, not wanting to leave, who wants to leave their homeland, but forced to leave.
Mm.
These are the realities we've been facing are very, very harsh and brutal. And I don't support war in any shape or form. So I really feel that if the world community comes together and demands that the people choose their way, the people of Iran, that we can make this happen without more bloodshed. But to answer your question, yes, I saw so much inequality between men and women as I was growing up, and after the Islamic takeover, absolute oppression of women. This regime built its foundations on forcing women into wearing the hijab. Iranian women do not wear the hijab. This is not in our tradition. It you could say it is in the tradition of the women of Saudi Arabia, for example, who have been Islamic. But the Iranian culture, from that is a very old civilization, one of the most ancient civilizations, is not a culture where women wear hijab. Women are not in the Iranian culture, the traditional ancient culture, are very emancipated. And we have so many examples of women in leadership positions throughout the Iranian and Persian Empire.
Mhm.
So this is all very new, really. And so I faced that. I saw the discrepancies. And then when I came to the United States, I saw that I didn't see that women were in their natural state as really displayed or expressed in the media, especially. I saw more something which was a different kind of mask, that they have to look a certain way, that they have to look appealing to the masculine gaze. So I found that to be the other side of the coin of what patriarchy has done to women and to the feminine spirit.
It's an interesting perspective on both to see, to have read that through your eyes. I've actually got quite a few Persian friends who grew up and lived there as young children and then had
Mhm.
to leave. Their families left, were able to
Yeah.
leave. I think it must have been around the same time you mentioned there was a window of time where people could leave. And it must have been around there because quite a few, I have at least six Persian friends and all of their families around the same time when they were little. And they were all female, by the way, all the girl, they're all girl,
Mm,
women. And when they were little girls, they've all shared different stories. Some live here in the United States, some live in London. And then I had a really close friend that I grew up with in Sydney, Australia, and we went to school together. And her parents,
mhm,
have fled as well.
mhm,
So there's stories of that time have been shared with me quite a bit by my friends,
mhm,
and even of course now with what's happening, it is. It's just there's atrocities that are just non-stop. And then the flip side, as you say in your book, when you were painting that picture, I was just like, wow, I would not have thought of these interesting, these parallels, but it's so true. We have this perception of the way we as women are supposed to look and be and present, and I've always thought that was, not right.
Yeah.
Like, you're not supposed to be a Playboy bunny. That's not,
Yeah.
you know?
That doesn't mean you're attractive, that it doesn't have to look that way.
Mhm.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, no, that's right. So you also talk about another movement that I'd not heard of. Is it pronounced Gurdjieff?
Gurdjieff, Gurdjieff.
Gurdjieff. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk
He,
about that. Because
sure.
when I had to look up the Gurdjieff Foundation, and then I looked at some dances, watched some YouTube
Yeah.
videos, and it reminded me very much of Rudolf Steiner's Eurythmy. Of course, they're quite different, but
Mm.
but it very much there was a similarity of the body movement.
Yes, yes, there is a similarity. So Gurdjieff was a turn of a century mystic who was from the Caucasus,
Mm,
and he was very curious and traveled throughout Asia and collected different teachings, different esoteric teachings, including dances, and then brought them together into a cohesive form that he called the work or the fourth way. So the fourth way really takes both from ancient mysticism and science, modern science, and presents this way of being that is grounded in becoming more present in the body.
mm,
And movements, sacred movements that he calls the practice, are central to this way, this esoteric way, where through the movements you integrate mind, body, and heart. Because he says normally these three aspects of ourselves do not are not in dialogue, they're not in communication, they're just separate, doing their own thing because we're asleep. We're just all walking automatons in a waking sleep state. So these dances, along with different work, quote unquote, that he prescribes, you can become more aware. You can literally wake up, and it's the movements that bring you into this state of being present.
mm,
And they're incredible. The movements are incredible. They teach us so many things, and they're mostly done in groups. It's never an individual practice. It's never a solo practice
mm,
because you attune with others and come into this ability to really widen your senses. So it's not just limited to you, but you get to sense yourself as part of a greater whole in a real visceral way.
mm. So, like, how, I mean, you've just touched a little bit on the esoteric aspects there of his work, but in a greater, more expansive definition, how is dance esoteric? Because if we look at the word, that means esoteric means, it's hidden knowledge, right? So
Mhm,
how can dance, when a lot of people, particularly in the West, think of dancing as maybe going to a club or going to watch a performance, ballet,
mhm.
for example,
Yeah, yeah.
or modern dance, right? They're not ever thinking that this is something, and this is where embodiment comes in, that if I can use my own body as a tool to awaken myself, my inner knowledge, this wisdom that resides within me. Uh,
Mhm.
how do you explain this? So what is that? How is dance esoteric and how is it healing?
So not all dance is necessarily esoteric. It really has to do with the intention of the one who's bringing the dance forth and the intention of who is witnessing it, who's participating. I actually wrote my thesis on what is sacred in dance. Where is it found? Is it in the performer? Is it in the audience? Is it in the location where it's presented? And I found that it's in all of these, all of these elements that I mentioned. But what's important here to say is that dance is a very ancient form of expression, probably predating language. And in its essence, in its roots, it's a sacred form. It was a way for our ancestors to commune with spirit, with the unseen. And over time, it became more of an entertainment, and it became more of something that you watch and you pay to go see, and it's going to entertain you. So when viewed that way, then it's kind of challenging to see, oh, can this actually have a hidden aspect? Can this actually help me awaken or become or step into a fuller version of myself? And that's where then this invitation comes in to really question or inquire, what it does it mean to dance? What does dance give us? And I'm sure that most people would immediately say joy. They would immediately say freedom, liberation. And all of these things are actually what we're also after when we go when we inquire or delve into esoteric teachings. How do I free myself of the
Mm,
shackles of my habitual way of being that stops me from experiencing how I'm truly unlimited? So dance gives us that, right? It makes you feel unlimited if that's what you allow. It's just putting on that piece of music you love, and maybe you're dancing alone or with people who you care about, and boom, you're flying.
And what about the people who say, "Oh, I don't like to dance. Oh, I can't dance."
Oh, there's so many of those.
So many. They're always at weddings.
And it's always interesting to me. It's like, what do you mean? If you have a body, you have a dance. How does that even make sense? I'm sure that everyone, even those who say I can't dance or I don't like to dance, that particular piece of music that really gets them, I'm sure they can't sit still. I'm sure they have to get up, or as they're sitting, they're moving with it. But especially to those people, I would say try it. Try it. Just see how it feels. Do
Mm,
it by yourself if you're, concerned that what, others might judge you. And the interesting thing is, especially in class, people don't really have time to look at each other and, do make the judgment that some people are concerned about. Everyone's just kind of in their own space trying to get their own thing. But then when we dance together, people are usually so supportive of one another and
mm.
so inviting.
It's a beautifully liberating experience, being able to just
Yeah.
feel the music and just kind of, I mean, I love the fact that you really, the practices in your book that, and that you can scan the QR code and you can listen to the, whether, I mean, they're not, just to be clear, they're not dance practices. They're meditative practices to drop into the body so you can feel. And that's a really beautiful thing. But you do have a couple that really have you twisting the neck and moving around and releasing the shoulders, and just those
Mhm.
simple acts of feeling the body allow us to drop in and get into a point. And then you have later in the book, you have that practice, and then you have put on some music afterwards in another practice that then encourages the person to move, and doing it in the privacy of your own home is a great way to start to kind of to loosen up and sort of feel parts of the body. I think like the hips, I think so many people are locked in and don't actually feel their whole bodies, right?
Yeah, yeah. The hips especially is a place that we tend to be so frozen in.
Mm,
And this is, the challenges that we have in terms of coming into alignment with our sexuality, accepting our sensuality, letting it flow. So many people, especially women, have issues with that. So the invitation to move your hips as a way to start to inhabit yourself as you are.
mm,
You don't need to be anybody else. You don't need to be this incredible mover. Just be you and find your way into be becoming more at ease in your own skin. And yeah, the practices you mentioned, there's only so much you can read about movement and movement instruction, dance instruction on paper. That's why I've included video and audio components that are accessed through a QR code. And a lot of them are movements, but there's also dance instruction, especially the whirling.
yeah.
I myself have never seen whirling taught, in this way, where you actually see the steps and then you follow them. So I hope that helps people who are interested in that and demystifies whirling as something that you might get dizzy and fall down.
I actually have that bookmarked in the book to go and to try. I've got
Yeah,
all the practices open already on my phone, but I've really wanted to experience that one, and I didn't have time to do it before we spoke, but I'm planning to do it because like
great.
I said, I'm really curious about it, and I know that that's going to be for me an experience that I'm going to really love and just get into. So I wanted to make sure I had enough time and and how much space do you need to give you like in terms of square footage? Like, are you slowly moving around in a skirt circle or and work your way up depending on where it takes you? So how much actual space in a room should we be giving ourselves for the whirling practice?
Yes. So basically, enough that when you open your arms and start step, you can be comfortable, making sure that you don't hit anything, that nothing is in your way to concern you. Once you've let go, to
Yeah.
feel like, oh my God, I'm gonna hit this or hit that. So giving yourself that unobstructed space, as you know, 5 by 5 feet would be good enough,
Okay.
because you need to stay in place.
Okay.
The invitation is to stay in place so that you experience the spiral moving up and moving
Mm.
down. If you start moving in space before you have established this spiraling up and down, the ascending and descending spiral, then you won't be able to experience that. It becomes more like an outward turning that we do in dance. And the whirling practice of the dervishes also moves in space.
Mm.
If you or your audience have seen that, but it first needs to be established in place.
Okay.
And then once you understand the spiral, as you're moving in space, you're still in place. So
Mm.
that needs to be established first.
Okay. I'm glad I asked you that and hadn't started to do it because I was imagining myself moving, not in one spot.
Mhm.
I was sort of like, oh my God, I'm gonna hit my Buddha. I'm gonna hit my, other things in the room. And then I was also wondering if the visual of almost like a white light spiral would be sort of coming from the ground up and then in reverse coming from above, moving down through me. And so those were things that I just sort of that came to me intuitively. And I just wondered, I wonder if those experiences will manifest in the
Mhm.
moment as I go deeper. Because you described how you were having visions.
Yeah, you have visions.
Yeah.
On I don't doubt it at all. That's what happens to people. You
Mm.
start having visions and guidance, and you're invited to ask a question if you have a question, and the answer arrives. It really does. It's quite a miraculous practice. You're only turning around yourself,
Yeah.
but each time is different.
Wow.
Every time it's
It's like
different.
a meditation, a dance, a meditative dance.
Absolutely. Some people say it's a meditation for those who can't sit still.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. Uh, I don't have a problem sitting still, but I love to dance, so I'm excited. I'm glad I got to ask you about this before I tried it out. So okay, why should somebody start dancing? Why should they try to embody and what does embodiment mean?
So embodiment. This is, it seems like a very simple thing, really. It's about the body, but it can be daunting. It can be kind of mysterious. What does that really mean? Because we, in our education system, we're really not taught to understand and learn about the body itself, right?
Mhm.
So we're taught all these mathematics and all these different things that many of us don't end up using that much. But nobody really teaches us as children where our organs are. I didn't know these things. Had to learn them as I was training for acupuncture, taking classes in anatomy and physiology, and wondering, first of all, why is it so boring the way they're taught? Completely disembodied. It's just talked about instead of, why don't you feel, put your hand on your, under your ribs on your right side, and that's where your liver is. No one teaches it like that. It's so wild to me that what the information that we need to know, actually more than anything, to be healthy and to persevere and to just be a fuller person, is about learning where my organs are.
Mm.
How many bones are in my body? How many, vertebrae do I have? These things are like daunting. No, we don't know these things.
No, we don't even know the systems of the body. Most people, if you ask them to
No.
name them, like what's the endocrine system? What are the glands and organs and stuff? No
Yeah.
one's gonna know.
Yeah. And they're so specifically taught in a way that's just cumbersome. These classes of anatomy and physiology are just dreaded going to them because it was all about memorize this, memorize that, which is so weird. And the Chinese medicine is completely the opposite. It's a story, the story of your body, the story of how energy moves in the meridians, the story of this meridian. It's so different. It's so interesting. So, make this a long story short, embodiment is to be present in our body, to become aware. in the body. And that awareness includes that the body is actually unlimited. It actually is the material aspect of our soul. It's actually more energy than matter. And what does that mean?
Mhm.
What does that mean in terms of our ailments, our physical limitations? Is it possible that through awareness and through the right kind of movement that's attuned and about listening to how my body wants to move, that we can heal ourselves from these ailments? That invitation, these are part of embodiment. And specifically to me, embodiment comes down to embodying love, this unifying energy, the energy that unifies body and soul into one and unifies self and other into one with discernment, of course. So that invitation of embodying love, and that includes loving ourselves and letting this energy of love seep into how the awareness of our body. So that's embodiment in a nutshell.
Of course, you also have embodiment practices
Y-
included in your book.
Yes, absolutely. Very simple embodiment practices of to become more aware in the body. So dance becomes one of the most accessible ways to embody ourselves because it's joyful and because it is something that all of us can actually do. You just put on that music and there you go. And if you want to go deeper with that, find deeper facets of what dance can give you, then you train, then you take class, then you attend this workshop or that workshop, work with this teacher or that teacher to add to your toolbox of becoming more aware in the body, the tools of how do I become more conscious in my body.
Yeah.
Rumi says to become conscious in the body is cause for rapture.
Mm. Isn't that
And
beautiful?
regardless of any pains, we all have different limitations. I've never met anyone who doesn't have some physical ailment. But can you, regardless of that, become conscious in your body? That we don't need to transcend or go beyond our ailments to be able to heal them, to
Mm.
be able to withstand them, to be able to be present regardless of them.
Yeah.
So, this is the invitation of dance, that it's so accessible and joyful, a joyful way to embody ourselves.
Yeah, it truly is. And it's such a, I think you can really tell a lot about a person who's too afraid to dance, who says, I can't dance. Because there's so much there, I always think to myself, wow, God, like, you know that you can. You're just holding back. What's happening? What's happened to you that you don't want to get up and move? And you're so afraid that people are going to be watching you. Look around, no one else is watching. They're all enjoying themselves so much. They're just in their moment, you know?
Mhm.
Come, experience, share this. You know, this is such a beautiful invitation, the Dance of Oneness, to awaken that aspect, within ourselves of to reunite. That's hence the name, I'm assuming, oneness, right? Like come back into whole, be be whole again, be one with everything around, like with all that is.
Yes, when mystics are at a loss of how to describe the world, even scientists, sometimes they say it's a dance. So why? Why do
Mm,
they say that? Because it actually encapsulates almost everything that you could explain or talk about in life. So
mm,
why not dance your life? And it doesn't mean necessarily to do that boogie dance or to do the whirling, but to explore what does dance give us and how can I bring that more into my life? How can I walk as if I'm dancing? How can I meet my day as if it's a dance? What does that even mean? It
mm,
always includes a level of upliftment. It always includes a level of being more open, more curious, more in wonder than already fixed with opinions and limitations. It's going beyond limitations. It's like saying, you know what, I have these restrictions, but boom, who cares? I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna dance anyway.
So if people wanted to learn to dance from you, how can they find what do you have YouTube videos that people can of course watch, but you've also got courses and online practices.
Yes, so they can go to danceofoneness.org and see the different offerings that I have. I have in-person offerings and online offerings, live online offerings, as well as video courses that they can do on their own, in their own time, at their own pace, and free stuff. So if they go to the website, they will find access to all of the offerings that they can join. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. They can find me Banafsheh Dance or Banafsheh Sayyad. And yeah, join the dance.
Very cool. And do you have are you touring anywhere? Are you performing?
Yes, so I'm performing in the local Los Angeles area, as well as I'm going to the East Coast for a 4-day retreat at the end of July at a beautiful place called Menla Center. It's in upstate New York. It's in Phoenicia. It's a
Mm,
beautiful Tibetan Buddhist center
yes.
where we'll spend 4 days. And prior to that, in New York and Boston and DC area, I will do short performance, book events, workshops. So all of that is mentioned on my website. I'll also be in France in August, in Chartres, and as well as Provence.
Okay.
So exploring the teachings of Mary Magdalene and many, many beautiful things.
Amazing. I love it. Is there anything else you would like to share?
I would just like to invite people to come in touch with their body as truly a temple, a gift. We didn't create this body, so it's a gift that we have access to for the short time that we are here. And as many mystics who have seen the body as an exalted being say, this dimension is where we become evolved, where we evolve in all dimensions.
Hmm.
This is why it's so difficult to be in physicality, and so many of us want to transcend and fly above it to minimize the challenges. But it's really going through the challenges in a way that is centered and grounded with an open heart that we evolve.
Hmm.
So come in touch with this temple of yours, this glorious, precious body of yours. That's truly sacred.
Thank you. That's so beautifully said. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.